Static. Panic on the radio. Just pure fear. I'd hear German transmissions erupt when certain generals arrived. They scrambled plans and shoved reinforcements into the meat grinder. Shovels hitting dirt. Frantic orders. 8 Allied and Axis commanders in World War II made the enemy sound this terrified. 8 military leaders whose very names caused radio silence. You and I are going to tune in and rank them, whose names sounded loudest in their nightmares. Number 8 made Japanese radios scream with new orders. Number 3 drew up blitzkrieg tactics that brought the Soviet Union to a deafening halt. Number 1. We intercepted reports of Germans taking their own lives. Even Hitler screamed orders to assassinate him. We aren't looking at body counts today, or who won the most ground. This is pure psychological warfare. It's about hearing the enemy's spirit snap through the static before a single rifle fires. Let's trace the signal on the 8 most feared World War II combat generals. Before we dial in, click that like button right now. It broadcasts to YouTube to send this to more military history fans. Hit subscribe so our signal always reaches you. Let's tune in to number 8. Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery. The Germans muttered his name like a metronome of death. His threat wasn't sudden noise or shock, it was steady volume. He never dropped a planned defense. From El Alamein in 1942 to the 1945 Rhine crossing, every clash he orchestrated ended in a deafening victory. German intercepts showed they braced for the slow, crushing roar of his war machine. He ignored gambles. He hated quiet risks. He piled up guns, planned the noise perfectly, and fired only when victory rang true. At El Alamein, 885 tanks roared against 500 Axis machines, almost double their troops. 12 days of pure thunder. Montgomery dropped an avalanche of artillery to crush the Axis lines. Rommel's famous Afrika Corps heard their own destruction. 30,000 Axis casualties. Another 30,000 surrendered. We heard their terror, not of his genius, but that slow, rhythmic competence grinding them to dust. German officers broadcast completely different orders when they heard Montgomery was on the field. You block Patton and pray. But with Montgomery, you and I know he waited until his artillery could drown out the sky. So they tried messing with his trucks, buying some quiet, and retreating before the drums started. After El Alamein, his boots chased Rommel 1,500 miles, Sicily, Italy, France. Straight into the heart of Germany, German troops ran from that sound for 3 straight years. He lands at 8 because the terror came from his steady, deafening hammer blows, not sudden surprises. Listening in, we knew the Germans accepted their doom. The radio chatter only asked how long they could survive. At 7, General Douglas MacArthur. His name made Japanese operators panic and scrap their plans. He drew up a blueprint that made enemy commanders sick island hopping. Before him, Pacific combat had one loud rhythm. Storm every rock. Listen to thousands. Die. Move to the next beach. Do it again. MacArthur stared at the map and asked, why? Instead of marching into a wall of guns, he just sailed past. He grabbed nearby reefs, built runways, killed their supply chatter, and let the garrisons starve quietly. In a direct assault, Japanese soldiers could scream their battle cries, kill Americans, and die proudly. But when he drove past, they sat on dead rocks, sick, hungry, and completely silenced. By 1945, 250,000 troops were cut off completely. Hunger and fever took most. Their guns sat totally useless. No rescue boats, just a long, quiet end. We saved our boys by letting the jungle swallow the enemy. Brutal, style, and flawlessly executed. Listen to me, the Japanese ripped up their whole playbook the second his boots hit their turf. They skipped random islands, stacking troops at major choke points instead. They heard MacArthur coming, knowing he'd bypass the rest. Then came the thunder of Leyte Gulf. Japan threw their entire surviving fleet into history's loudest naval clash to stop him. It ended in crushing, deafening defeat. MacArthur had a massive ego. His shameless self-promotion was loud, but beneath that noise hid a brilliant, unpredictable strategy. That silent tension terrified Japanese commanders. By August 1945, MacArthur commanded over 2 million soldiers across the Pacific, ready to strike. The climax rang out September 2nd, 1945. When he accepted Japan's surrender, he takes 7th place. Japanese commanders dreaded his explosive, unpredictable tactics that shattered their defensive lines. with deafening clarity. Listen closely to number 6. Lieutenant General Lucien Truscott, the ghost the Germans couldn't track. He created the Truscott Trot, a punishing forced march hitting 5 miles per hour under full combat gear. Standard Army doctrine was 2.5 miles per hour. His infantry divisions marched twice as fast. A quiet rumble building. We might not hear the danger until the devastating operational climax hits. German commanders always built their defenses around standard, predictable American troop movement speeds. They calculated, the American 3rd Division arrives in 48 hours at normal speed. We have plenty of time to dig in. Then Truscott's men would suddenly strike 24 hours early. Defenses stood empty. Artillery completely missed. Reserves were out of position. The climax hit before Germans could react. Truscott was already 20 miles past them. During Operation Dragoon in August 1944, planners guessed capturing southern France and linking with Normandy forces would take a grueling 90 days. Truscott violently smashed that timeline in 28 days. The massive German 19th Army, packing 285,000 troops, was meant to quiet him. Instead, Truscott's 6th Corps blitzed so fast, German intelligence swore they heard 3 separate American armies advancing. They weren't, just one general proving loud and clear that blistering speed kills way faster than heavy firepower. Truscott earned spot 6. German commanders didn't just fear his raw power, they were terrified of his loud, impossible escapes. He boldly struck exactly where he shouldn't be. He shattered speed calculations, vanishing like smoke before German tanks could even mount a loud counterattack. That relentless, shocking unpredictability breeds quiet, paralyzing fear. Number 5. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox, whose loud tactics rewrote the rules. British commanders in North Africa between 1941 and 42 dreaded Rommel's roar. He completely shattered how normal generals fought. Standard, quiet doctrine stated, generals stay in headquarters, review intel, give orders, and let the men execute. Rommel refused. He commanded from the screaming front lines, personally leading panzer attacks. He made real-time choices based on the explosive chaos he saw, ignoring distant staff reports. The British built defenses targeting his assumed headquarters. Then Rommel would erupt in a tank 30 miles away, leading a deafening surprise assault that completely shattered their plans. At the chaotic Battle of Gazala in May 1942, British troops heavily outnumbered Rommel's Afrika Corps, locking down heavily fortified defensive positions. They should have won easily, but Rommel bypassed them, massed his panzers, and crushed British armor in 5 chaotic days. British commanders simply couldn't answer the noise. Rommel's blistering pace shattered their command structure before they could react. Winston Churchill famously said about Rommel's thunder, "We face a daring, highly skilled opponent, and through the roaring havoc of war, a truly great general." That praise is extraordinary. Churchill praised an active enemy mid-war because Rommel's thunderous strikes commanded absolute respect and terrifying fear. American forces finally met Rommel's fury at Kasserine Pass in February 1943. Rommel demolished the American 2nd Corps in 3 days. 6,500 casualties, 4,000 captured. Entire battalions were crushed. After Kasserine, American commanders studied Rommel's deafening tactics obsessively. Patton seized 2nd Corps, relentlessly drilling his men to counter the sheer shock of Rommel's mobile warfare. Rommel takes 5th. Allied commanders across 2 continents feared his loud tactical brilliance and his hunger for explosive, shattering risks. Listen to how North Africa fell. Britain just roared in with more tanks, supplies, and men. Yet every Allied commander who faced Rommel echoed the same truth. He was the deadliest threat they fought. Now, here number 4. General Heinz Guderian, the father of Blitzkrieg. Heinz Guderian did not just wage war, he unleashed a deafening new warfare that shattered every old defense strategy into absolute silence. Before him, tanks were a quiet rumble, slowly supporting infantry. Tanks crawled at walking pace, a slow, booming shield for the foot soldiers. Guderian asked, what if tanks don't support infantry? What if tanks attack independently at full speed, punch through enemy lines, and destroy command posts before the enemy realizes they've been breached? That booming doctrine became Blitzkrieg, terrifying. Every army that heard its thunder, in May 1940, Guderian's roaring panzer corps smashed right through the Ardennes forest, cracking French defenses wide open in just 4 days. French commanders called the Ardennes totally impassable. Guderian's roaring engines proved them dead wrong. His tanks tore 50 miles in 3 days, hit the English Channel in 7, and completely severed the British forces. The deafening crash of France was swift. Europe's largest army and their mighty forts shattered in exactly 6 weeks. French generals simply could not hear the reality. They braced for quiet. World War I style, trench warfare. Guderian unleashed a screaming World War II mobile assault that outpaced their radio chatter. Later, Soviet commanders feared that noise even more. Come June 1941, his 2nd Panzer Group roared into the Soviet Union. They ripped across 400 miles in 3 weeks, trapping entire armies in screaming steel rings. When the guns echoed at Kiev in September 1941, his panzers trapped 665,000 Soviet troops, the largest net in military history. Stalin's frantic orders demanded they hold. In just 2 weeks, Guderian silenced the entire defending army. He hits number 4 because his engines didn't just win fights, they made old defense doctrines completely mute. Opposing commanders shook at his name. Fighting him meant facing a deafening new warfare they simply could not understand or silence. After the guns went quiet, his memoir, Panzerlieder, became required reading in military academies across the globe. Generals read his words, desperate to understand the roaring tactics that broke them. Listen to number 3. Field Marshal Erich von Manstein. Here is a twist for us. Manstein was the only general here whose commands sent as many shivers down his own ranks as the enemy's. Hitler dreaded his brilliance. Soviet commanders feared how easily he salvaged loud, crushing disasters. And German field marshals hated hearing that Manstein was always right, making him an absolute nightmare to work alongside. He orchestrated the deafening invasion of France in 1940. The original plan was a quiet echo of World War I: invade Belgium, then blindly march down toward Paris. Manstein spoke up loudly. That predictable plan would totally fail. He pitched the Ardennes route, pack all heavy armor into that silent, impassable forest, smash through weak French lines with a roar, slicing Allied forces in half before alarms could even sound. Hitler approved it, completely ignoring the loud groans of his senior generals. The roaring invasion shattered every single expectation. France crashed in 6 weeks. Out east, Manstein made real noise as the ultimate master of pure defensive warfare. By early 1943, at the Third Battle of Kharkov, the Soviets violently pushed German lines back 500 miles. Stalin heard the Wehrmacht finally cracking. Manstein orchestrated a fighting retreat, quietly luring Soviet forces until they snapped. Then he unleashed a roaring counteroffensive, crushing 5 Soviet armies and snatching back Kharkov. The silence stunned Soviet commanders. Advancing for weeks, their victory felt absolutely guaranteed. Then Manstein violently flipped the script. After Kharkov, Soviet radios whispered one specific, terrifying question: is Manstein in this sector? If yes, well, you and I can guess. They dug in, bracing for a deafening, unexpected counterattack. Listen closely. He told Hitler the truth. Manstein flew straight to headquarters, dropping a bomb. He said Germany was losing the war. He urged falling back east to solid ground and making peace with the Western forces. Then throw everything at the Soviets. Hitler's screaming fury echoed. Generals never spoke up like that. They just quietly followed orders. But Manstein's voice didn't waver. He warned that holding every inch was shattering the German army. He argued loud and clear: trade space for time, or face a crushing, total collapse. Hitler fired him in March 1944. Manstein sat out the remaining war in forced retirement. After the war, he faced a war crimes conviction for turning a blind eye to atrocities under his command. He spent 4 years locked up, walked out in 1953, and died at 85. Manstein takes 3rd place. Soviet generals trembled at his brilliant knack for flipping loud defeats into victories. He alone could pull off roaring comebacks from disasters that would have crushed anyone else. Even Hitler feared him. Manstein was the only commander brave enough to look him in the eye and call him wrong. Listen to this next one. Number 2. General George S. Patton. Patton claims second because German leaders dreaded the sound of his name more than anyone else. Not respected, purely feared. His Third Army took out 1.4 million enemy troops between August 1944 and May 1945. The loudest, deadliest record of any American force in Europe. But the body count does not explain the terror that came from his roaring speed. During the booming Battle of the Bulge, December 1944, German troops launched a deafening ambush, punching 50 miles deep into the Allied lines. Americans were trapped at Bastogne. The radio calls were utterly desperate. Eisenhower called an urgent meeting on December 19th, asking who could break the siege at Bastogne. Patton replied, "I can attack in 48 hours." The rest of the room loudly called it impossible. His Third Army was busy fighting 60 miles south to save Bastogne. He had to stop shooting, turn an entire army 90 degrees, march 60 miles through winter storms, and strike hard. No military had ever pulled off something that huge that fast. Patton did it in 48 hours. On December 22nd, they attacked. By December 26th, Patton's men smashed right into Bastogne. German generals were stunned. They thought they had a quiet week before American backup could arrive. Patton showed up in 4 days. After that, German intelligence broadcasted very specific warnings. Find Patton when he moves. The brace for a massive attack within 72 hours. Let that sink in for us. A whole army adjusting for one man's movement. His final push tore across Germany in March and April 1945. Third Army moved impossibly fast. German units just stopped fighting. They either surrendered or ran, because fighting Patton meant a loud, certain death. His tanks rolled too fast for any defense. His strikes were way too heavy to block with limited troops. That brutal momentum sparked pure terror. Patton died in December 1945 after a car crash. He rests in Luxembourg American Cemetery, surrounded by his men. Patton is second because German leaders feared the man himself. They were not afraid of his army. They feared his hunger to attack loudly, ignoring casualties, supply lines, or basic military rules. And finally, number 1, Marshal Georgy Zhukov, the commander who drove Germany's elite to suicide. Zhukov wiped out more enemy troops than any general in history. Over 2 million German casualties ring directly back to his brutal operations, but we don't rank him first just for the numbers. He is first because German generals chose suicide over hearing his boots approaching. This wasn't quiet respect. This was loud, existential terror. Zhukov built his name on deafening victories that defied all logic. December 1941. You could hear German artillery just 15 miles from the Kremlin. Hitler was already tuning up his victory band. Then, Zhukov struck. Taking command of the defense, he unleashed a roaring winter counterattack in sub-zero cold. The exhausted, frozen Germans, totally deaf to the coming winter, were pushed back 200 miles. Germany's first major, echoing defeat. By November 1942, his Operation Uranus slammed shut like a steel trap around the Sixth Army. 291,000 troops trapped. Only 91,000 lived to surrender. The rest went silent. You and I are going back to July 1943. Germany's final Eastern Front roar at Kursk. Hitler threw in 900,000 men, 2,700 tanks, and 2,000 planes. But Zhukov spent months listening and planning. He fortified lines, hid reserves, and knew exactly where the thunder would strike. For a month, Kursk Rajet, Germans crawled 10 miles before hitting a deafening, cold brick wall. Zhukov roared back, shoving their shattered forces 300 miles. The Eastern Front went quiet for German offensives. The Wehrmacht's spine audibly snapped at Kursk. Fast forward to spring 1945. Zhukov aimed 2.5 million men at Berlin for one final, ground-shaking assault. Their resistance crumbled within days. May 8th, 1945. Zhukov accepted their total, silent surrender. The war ended. This hero's fame rang so loud that a paranoid Stalin decided to mute him entirely, demoted and exiled. His voice only returned after Stalin died. He passed in 1974, aged 77. Why is he number 1? Because German commanders heard his name and trembled like never before. He dominated every major clash. He never surrendered a single defensive position. He flipped quiet disasters into roaring victories through pure, brilliant willpower. Think about this with me. Knowing he was coming, some generals chose a bullet over facing him. That is absolute, paralyzing terror. These 8 legends didn't just win fights. They echoed inside their enemies' darkest nightmares. They broadcasted a fear that shattered morale and audibly broke armies before the first gunshot. So you and I must ask, did we get this ranking right? Should Patton take the crown for his loud aggression? Should Manstein rank higher for making Hitler sweat? Does Rommel deserve a bump because Churchill openly sang his praises? Sound off in the comments right now. Give us your list. Tell us who we missed and where you're watching from. Thanks for listening and watching. We remember these generals not just for their medals, but for the deafening fear their names struck into the hearts of their enemies. We will hear from you in the next one.